Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes while we wait to see if wait for the last few people to show up, and then we'll kick off at I think we'll say 3 minutes past, if that's all right with everyone. Fab. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tearing yourself away from, I think it's rugby that's on today. Dylan, I'm sure you're a fan, so you'll be able to fill me in a moment. I've been torn away from the excitement of watching my beloved Bournemouth get absolutely pummeled in the FA Cup today. So I'm quite pleased to be joining in for this. Dylan, are you tuning in for the Six Nations after this?
I don't know. I might do. I've got a couple consultations booked, but certainly if I get a space free, I might watch hopefully a try or two getting scored.
Fab. All right. First of all, thanks everyone for coming. It's always lovely to see so many of you here. Today we're going to be talking about applying for STEM subjects. Oh, first of all, we'll introduce ourselves. I'm sorry, I got those in the wrong order. First off, my name is Matt. I look after our research here at UniAdmissions. So my job is to make sure that everything that we suggest and recommend that we put together as part of our programs is based on real results, that I can put it in spreadsheets, that it really pays off and is an accurate reflection of the work we do. So that's something we're really proud of, that rather than just coming up with a bunch of stuff we think might work, we do check. And that's my job. Dylan, what's your job? Why are you here?
Yes, my name is Dylan. I'm an admissions consultant, so I spend my days speaking to parents and students. I take all the information that Matt finds and convey it over to students and parents so that they have, the most up-to-date information about the application process, and they know what they're doing during the admissions cycle. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, and I'm joining here to do some more of that today.
Fab, thanks. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about applying to study STEM subjects. That's science, technology, engineering, and maths. at Oxford, Cambridge. And we're going to be joined by Rebecca for the Q&A portion of the discussion, who is a recent Oxford biochemistry grad who's going to be able to help out with some of the more nuanced questions that I don't know the answers to because I've never been a biochemist. And next week, we're going to be talking about applying to study humanities subject at Oxford and Cambridge. And the week after that, we won't be talking about anything because it's Holy Week and I'm busy with church stuff. So I'm going to be enjoying that week off, worrying about Christ again. Applying to study STEM subjects at Oxford and Cambridge. I've broken this up into 3 parts. So we're going to be talking first about the different subjects you can choose within the STEM context. We'll be talking about how you get in and what patterns there are that we've drawn out from our data. I'll be talking a little bit about the interview as well. Sort of trying to cover all of these bases so that you've got a clear idea of what steps you need to be taking to make that competitive application. So first of all, we're going to be talking about picking a subject. So the first question is how should you choose your subject? Now, most of the time people will go, right, well, I'm good at English. I guess I will study English. I'm good at maths. I guess I will study maths. Now, with the science subjects, this can be a little bit more complex as there are a lot of degrees out there that focus on academic areas that you won't have studied at school. So at school, you're going to be limited to kind of the classic set of sciences, chemistry, physics, biology and maths. Those are kind of your options. But when you find yourself applying to university, suddenly all of these extra options pop up, you know, biochemistry, chemical engineering, normal engineering, things like this, different categories that you won't have studied specifically at school. And so you're going to have to see if those are going to be more suitable for you than the kind of classics of chemistry and physics and maths. The thing to remember here as well is that while at Oxford, these subjects are split up along the same lines as at school, at Cambridge, these are all packaged together as what's called natural sciences. And so the admissions process there requires you to be interested in at least 2 of them from the standpoint of the test. And the specialization comes a little later in the process at Cambridge than it does at Oxford. So that's a nuance worth having in mind when you're picking between the 2. As we always say, the really important thing to do is to make sure that you're picking between subjects, not between institutions. And I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of our students in the last few weeks, Dylan, who are keen on Oxford or Cambridge, but are still making decisions about subjects, right?
Yeah, quite a few students are questioning, and something that we help with as well. So, but it's important to get that that subject choice down, because each subject, as you know, Matt, would have a different test involved. So yeah, it's key to get that sorted.
Yeah. Obviously, there's plenty of scope to change your mind, particularly relatively early in the admissions processes now. But it is worth making sure that you've got a clear plan. And the thing here to remember is that the level of competition for some of these courses can vary much more than you might expect. So, for example, as we've pulled out here, for chemistry at Oxford, which unusually has no test, 34% of people who apply are offered places, and the success rate for biochemistry is less than half that, even though there's a fairly large overlap in terms of the content that's taught. People just don't want to study chemistry for some reason. Biochemistry is just that bit a bit more exciting, a bit more glamorous. Quite why, I don't understand. I was dreadful at chemistry, but people are avoiding it. So if you're not sure between the two, those little nuances can be really helpful when you're making your decision. The other thing to say is that while we are pretty agnostic on gap years for a lot of subjects, it's generally speaking not recommended to take one if you're planning to study the sciences. The reason for this is that chances are you will forget a lot of the maths, a lot of the biology, a lot of the physics during your gap year, because it'd be very unusual for someone to spend their gap year studying physics while also backpacking around South America. generally speaking, it's a good idea to go straight in so that you can continue building that that expertise from A level onwards. And we'll talk about this a little bit in the context of math specifically right now on the next slide, in fact. So Dylan alluded to tests a moment ago, and we're going to come on to talk about the importance of tests in a moment with the lovely pie chart, which loyal viewers will be familiar with. But we're thinking about what matters in the context of the STEM application. So the first thing to say is that the personal statement is less important than it would be for English or history. If you're applying for English, obviously, if your personal statement is full of spelling mistakes, it doesn't make any sense, the grammar is all over the place, they're going to look at that and go, huh, someone who wants to study English, this guy's pretty bad at English. And the same will go for history. By contrast, with the sciences, you're not going to be writing very many essays in physics, even fewer in engineering. And so if your essay writing skills, as reflected in your personal statement, aren't the absolute top, that's going to be less of a problem. By contrast, this means that there is much more weight put on the admissions tests, which I'm going to draw out some data about in a moment to really give you some numbers on that. And this is something that people will not always be aware of, the importance of the admissions test. People tend to underrate them. And this is something we work really hard to emphasize here at UniAdmissions, because particularly for the STEM subjects, the admissions test makes up such a huge portion of the outcome. The last thing to add here is that Cambridge, they changed their system a few years ago. And so there is no longer a test before the interview for maths at Cambridge. Instead, they get you to do a test after the offer, which creates this slightly unusual setup where you will have maybe 30% more offers put out by Cambridge than they have spaces to fill to study maths, and they will then cut you down using the STEP, the sixth term examination paper, which is a very difficult maths test that you sit at the very end of year 13. So the thing to bear in mind there is, if you're applying for maths at Cambridge, you want to be getting yourself ready, not just beforehand for the interview and to get that place, but really pushing yourself, in effect, in a year's time to get that score in the STEP that's going to secure your place. And it is a challenging exam. I've looked at the STEP papers and I did not understand them. I was never a particularly brilliant mathematician, but I had no idea how to even begin. Speaking of a kind of maths I do understand, Dylan, can you tell us about the pie chart?
Yes, certainly. So the pie chart is something that we use just to illustrate the importance of each part of the application that you'll go through this year. So, we've touched on a few instances, so I'll just quantify those for you. So if you take a look at the pie chart, you'll see in orange the admissions test score, and this is where we were saying you should see how important it is. So it's just as important as your exam grades, which you'd see that's represented by the blue. So your exam grades are your whatever you're writing at the moment. So your predicted A levels, IB, whatever exams you're writing, that would be what you'd be scored against GCSEs as well. But they have whatever it is that you're writing, they have just as an importance as your admissions tests. And they also have the same importance as the interview. So what we say is, as an average, each section would have a 30% weighting for admissions tests, your exam grades, and your interviews. And then the smaller percentage, which we've highlighted as everything else in yellow, would be your personal statement, your school references, work experience, and things like this. Okay, so the reason why it's important to know what the universities look at and how much importance is placed on each part is really because you want to know how you want to be spending your time, how much how much effort, how much importance you put on each part of the application. And so it's important to know these figures. I get a lot of applicants come to me in the first instance when I'm speaking to them on the phone, and really excited. They have these great exam grades. They're doing really well at school, and that's absolutely great. It puts you in the running. But it's key to keep in mind that there's more to the application. In the instance of Oxbridge, most students will have really good results in the terms of exam grades. So certainly, I speak to a lot of applicants over the phone, and they all are of really good academic quality. And so then you realize that, well, you have to score really well in your admissions test, show show yourself in the best light in the interview, and write a really good personal statement to really and truly actually stand a chance to get admitted into one of the universities.
Fab. Thanks, Dylan. As Dylan says there, it's a case of making sure that you've got a really good application across all of those quadrants because of how competitive these subjects are. But particularly for the STEM subjects, we worry in particular about the admissions test. So we're going to talk about that a little more. I've got some lovely graphs for you. This is everyone's favorite part of the presentation when I get out the graphs. So we talked about the importance of the admissions test, and I just wanted to really push these home by looking at the strength of the correlation between doing well on the test and getting a place. So as you can see here, students who are scoring in the bottom half of the distribution for the PAT, this is the physics test at Oxford, they're not getting interviews at all. This is the entirely blue section of the graph. Really up until you're getting really something in the region of 57, 60, your chance of getting an interview are very, very small indeed. Those are the shortlisted candidates highlighted in orange. So a huge chunk of people who apply are right down here at this left-hand side of the distribution. They're not doing well on the test, and they're not even getting to the interview stage. Now, if we look at the shortlisted candidates, we can see that the shortlisting tracks fairly clearly along from around, I think we'd say the top third of test takers onwards, reaching the point where pretty much where you've got a more than 50% chance of being interviewed once you get to around 66, 67 points. And once you're above that 68 point mark, everyone who scores that well is getting interviewed as the blue section of the graph disappears. And so this is why we put such an emphasis on the admissions tests. If you can get that 68, 69 points on the PAT, you're going to get an interview. Now, if you're getting only a few marks fewer than that, say 57, your chances are all the way back down at something like 30%. That change between those 12 marks, which on the PAT might only be 1, 2, maybe even 3 questions, that level of change is so valuable in terms of getting the interview, because without the interview, you're not going to get in. And if we look then at the placed candidates, we can see that at the very top of that distribution of the test scores, even the orange section disappears. So there are people there where 100% of the people getting, I think it's over about 88, 89, all of them are getting in. There's very few of them, maybe a dozen, but they all get in. And right down to the point of getting about 77, your chances of getting in with that kind of score are well over 50%. As you can see, this graph is a little choppy because I haven't run a smoothing algorithm over it, because I just wanted to show the real detail of it. As you can see, the relationship between the test score and the chance of getting the place is just so strong with these tests. This is why we put such a big emphasis on it, as adding 5 or 6 points can take you from a situation where you're very unlikely to get an interview to suddenly where your odds on. And that's what we try to do through our specific support for the admissions tests. I wanted to show you another one of these just to show it wasn't an anomaly. This one's a little easier to read. So this is for the test for maths at Oxford. And as you can see here, On the left-hand side, we have people who are applied but not shortlisted. And your chances of being shortlisted, that is to say getting an interview, only reach 50% once you're scoring in the 66 to 70 percent bracket. Before that, your chance of getting an interview are, decreasing very smoothly. And you see again that same curved pattern with the offers a little bit further on. Once you're scoring above 82, 83, everyone's getting an interview, and your chance of getting in are somewhere between 30 and 50%. And at the very top end of the score distribution, pretty much everyone's getting in. Obviously, there are some discrepancies. I feel very sorry for the couple of guys there who scored at the very top of the MAT but didn't get in after their interview. I guess they must have been really bad at interview. And you can see down at the other end a couple of offer holders down in the 50s. I guess those guys must have been spectacular in interview. It's also worth bearing in mind here that these tests are put in context with the rest of your application. So if you're if you score brilliantly on the test, but you're coming from a school which has really high achieving students, that's going to count very much in your favor. But if you're coming from a school with lower levels of achievement, but scoring higher, that's going to be a little bit of a boost for you, as everything you put forward is going to be seen in context. Ultimately, if you're the best student your school has produced in 20 years, that's going to be more valuable to you than being the best student your school has produced this year, unfair as that might feel sometimes. So if we've got through the test, hopefully we've done well. We've ended up in one of these segments towards the end in the 80s where you're getting that interview. You're going to get to the interview. So I'm not sure if Dylan has seen these interview questions, so we might see if Dylan can answer any of them, which might be fun. He looks terrified. So for the STEM interviews, you're going to have a lot of graph and data interpretation questions. They'll probably be quite tricky, and they'll be looking at subjects that you haven't necessarily areas that you haven't necessarily studied at school. I'm sure Rebecca will be able to help us with some specific examples. But they're going to be similar to the kind of problems that you faced in the admissions test. The idea is what they want to find out is, when we left you alone in a room with a piece of paper, you could answer this question really nicely. Now that's great, but we also want you to be able to explain how you worked it out, to show us you're working, to communicate your passion and your skill at the subject in question. We want you to be able to communicate it to other people face to face, not just on a piece of paper. So I've got a couple of examples here. These are drawn from the last couple of years of interviews that we make sure to gather questions from. You can read about them in our book, The Ultimate Oxbridge Interview Guide. And in addition to the graph questions we talked about earlier, I didn't decide to insert one of those. I pulled out some of the sort of gentler, bigger picture ones. So what is your favorite number? Was a question that was asked to a student of mine last year in a Cambridge Maths interview. I think they said their favorite number was 1. I'm not sure why, but the trick is to have a good explanation for why you have a particular favorite. Obviously, if you've chosen pi or I or one of the other difficult numbers, you'll have to have a good logic as well. Thinking about biology, you might be asked why it is that cats live longer than dogs on average, given that they have very similar kind of living context once domesticated. You might be asked how aeroplanes work in the context of physics or engineering. I don't know. I try not to think about it. And you might be asked what you would change about the periodic table. This is my favorite as a difficult chemistry question. I think I would put it into alphabetical order. That would be my suggestion, but I'm not sure that will be useful for the chemists. Are there any here, Dylan, that you feel that you would be equipped to answer, or would you be as intimidated as I would be by these?
I mean, I'll give all of them a go, but I'll be quite interested in the cats live longer than dogs. I feel like that's a good general topic for anyone to have a crack at. So what would you say?
I mean, I speaking from the experience of my own dog, I wonder if it's all of the horrible things they like to sniff and to eat while they're out on their walks. Maybe it's too much exercise that does it for dogs, whereas cats tend to be much lazier and sleepier. Maybe the cats are living a safer life that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had 5 dogs before, all at once, and the way if you just watch a dog and a cat for half an hour, I think you'll soon come to realize why dogs, well, why cats live longer than dogs. um, yeah, absolutely. They just all over the place. So yeah, I'd say that's a good one.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a quality versus quantity thing there as well, though, given how long cats seem to spend asleep each day.
Yeah.
Fab. All right. So that brings us on to talking more specifically about the things that we can offer here at UniAdmissions in terms of support. So Dylan, you're more of an expert on these than I am. So if you could talk a little bit about the resources and then about the enrichment, and I'll talk about the, sorry, but if you talk about the resources and the day courses, I'll talk about enrichment and then about one-to-one tuition. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds good. So I got resources and day courses, right? So
Yeah, and here
yeah.
they are. First up.
Awesome. Okay, so the first part of any program, or certainly our program, is to make sure you have all the materials and all the guidance you need to get through your admission cycle. So we have our own content that we've produced that you can only get by coming through our programs or buying on Amazon. And so it's everything that you'll need, from college selection to admissions test support to writing a good personal statement to delivering a good interview, right? So it's important that you have the right books, the right online platform, and just all the right resources for you to really go through your admissions cycle with confidence. And then that's certainly what we provide. So hundreds of questions, and that will come in the form of both an online learning platform, textbooks, as well as ebooks as well. Next, we'll have our day courses. So our day courses are run usually over the weekend, usually around 8 hours as well. And the whole point of these is to make sure that you're ready for a particular part of the application. So for example, we'd run an 8-hour day course for your personal statement. We'd run an 8-hour day course for your admissions test, whatever that may be, which depending on the subject and the university you're applying for, and then an 8-hour day course for your interviews as well. So Matt is going to tell you a little bit about the one-to-one tuition, but the whole point about the day courses is we want to round up and consolidate the information that you've been learning throughout the year. You have access to all these great resources and the online learning platform. The tutors will be helping you. And so these day courses are really used to round up and consolidate that information and make sure you're ready for each part of your application by working with an expert tutor, and also by working and seeing what your peers are doing as well.
Fab. Thanks, Dylan. So Dylan mentioned the online preparation portal. So hopefully this video is going to work. So this is something new that we've introduced in the last 9 months or so, and has been particularly valuable with a lot of the tests being online now because of the famous virus. I don't know if you've heard about it. And what this allows students to do is to get hold of all the resources they need for these tests all in one place. So if I set the video going, so this is set up for engineering, I believe. So this will give you the first section of it, the Learn section. This introduces you to all of the relevant mathematical ideas for tackling the admissions test. And it's just carefully aligned with the specification of the test so that everything you need to know will be there for you. You can then move into the Revise section. You can pull out the topic that you're interested in, and you can work through questions that we've written internally that are carefully audited to the same standard as the test itself, so that you've got dozens and dozens of these questions to practice on, so that you can really get the hang of this test, the style of the test, the level, the format of the questions, really feel confident in what you're doing. And then when you've done that preparation, you can move into the simulate area and you can work through the real past papers for all of these tests to really test yourself against the real thing and make sure that you're getting the scores that you're aiming for when compared with what people have been looking at in past years. It may seem obvious, but what we found is if you're really good at the 2018 version of the test, you'll find the 2019 version much more straightforward than if you were bad at the 2018 version. And this is all about making sure that your level of preparation is really on point before you get to those past papers. Now, there is a little bit more to what we offer. Dylan mentioned the Enrichment Seminars. This is a weekly session coming up tomorrow afternoon. They're every week. And these are a deep dive into university level topics so that students who are applying for these subjects, who are worried about guiding their further reading, who are concerned about making sure that they're up to speed with the relevant academic ideas. These seminars go beyond what's available to you in a school setting. They match you up with your peers, with recent graduates and current students in the subject you're interested in studying, and they help you to explore the full range of ideas and topics within that subject, so that when you come to the personal statement, when you come to the interview, you really understand these nuances of your subject area, you're able to show your passion and dedication to it, and you're ready for that kind of discussion because you've been practicing it for the last 18, 20, 30 weeks. It'll all be fairly familiar to you. And on top of all of this, we have the kind of classic provision of one-to-one tuition. We'll match you with, as we said, a current student or recent graduate in the subject you're planning to study. They'll be able to offer you expert, tailored tuition that focuses on your weaknesses, that helps you to address the areas of your application that need the most work. Help you, and will then be able to help you prepare for your interview with further tutors, giving you the real sort of interview experience working with 4 or 5 tutors, again, in your subject area, people you don't know, just like the real interview, making sure that you're as well practiced as you can be before it all starts. Now, one thing that we get questions about is, well, very much questions from parents. They ask us, well, I've done all of this, it's been marvelous, but I asked my teenage daughter and she says, oh, fine, leave me alone, and goes to her room. So to prevent this from happening, we make sure that after every session, you as a parent will receive a detailed report via email. There's an example up on the screen for you, letting you know what's been studied, what are the key points for progression have been for your son or daughter, and how they're getting on so far. This is just a tool for making sure that you're not entirely reliant on a teenager for finding out what's going on. No offense to any teenagers in the audience. I'm sure you'll appreciate having the reminder of what you've done as well, if you're as forgetful as I am. Now, all of this does pay off. In the last cycle, we were fortunate enough to get around 63% of our students into Oxford and Cambridge for the subjects they applied for, compared with 18% for students who did not work with us. We're in the final stages of reviewing our data for this past year, and we're hoping to achieve something close to this result in what has turned out to be an unbelievably competitive year for Oxford and Cambridge. And we're proud to say that our results compare really favourably with some of the top schools in the country. These are the schools that send the most applications to Oxford, and we're pleased to say that our success rates are somewhat ahead of theirs. Sadly, we do not offer the same quality of sporting facility or nice hats as you can get at Eton College, but we do try and do our best in terms of the Oxbridge stuff, even if we do let ourselves down on some of the other areas by comparison with these august institutions. Now, some of what I've talked about so far must seem a little scary. So Dylan, reassure people by telling them about our ideal student.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, absolutely academic, your academics are going to play a part. However, we understand that your application is a lot more than just academics. You know, you have your tests, your interviews, and your personal statement. And from the pie charts, we see that that actually makes up a large percentage of your application. And so, you know, we've spoken you through the program, and we have a lot of experience working with applicants and getting them the offers that they like or that they want. And so what we found by working with all these students is that what's far more important to us is the willingness to actually be a part of the program, and their want and desire to get into Oxbridge. And so a lot of the times when I'm speaking to parents and students, there is a discussion around the student wanting to be a part of the program, and having the time and in their diary really to put towards the program and having the right attitude. I like to speak to all applicants that join the program as well. So for us, it's more about the attitude of the applicant coming into the program, because we have this success rate. We have Matt, who's constantly, you know, finding out these new techniques and trends. We have fantastic tutors and resources. So we have a program that works. And so, you know, for us, what's really important, and it should be as well, for you as an applicant and yourselves as parents, to want to be a part of the program, and certainly have a positive and motivated attitude towards getting the best admissions test score you can, delivering the best interview, and writing the best personal statement. And if you want to work with us, we can help you achieve those things, but you certainly have to have the right attitude. So our ideal student certainly would be of academic quality, but certainly have the right attitude as well.
Fab. Thanks, Dylan. The last thing to add is that we are really confident in the quality of what we do, and we're really proud of the results we're able to achieve. But if you're a little worried about all of that, we do offer a fully refundable 2-week trial on all of our programs. That's to say, if you join in, you see the resources, you spend a little bit of time with your tutor, but you find that it's really not for you, that's fine. We're not going to force anyone to stay. And within that 2-week window, we're able to offer a full refund for students who don't feel that they're well matched with us. We're not going to force you to stick around if it's not for you. But on the whole, people do stick around. They say lovely things about us on Trustpilot. We encourage you to go to Trustpilot and read those reviews. If you enjoyed this webinar, please go to Trustpilot and say how much you enjoyed this webinar. That way I can replace these extracts with an extract talking about how nice I am, which would make me feel much happier. So please do help us out there. And the final thing to add is, in addition to providing a paid service, we also do provide a heavily subsidized service for students in need. Last year, we worked with 93 students on a discounted basis. We had capacity for 100. We were only able to find 93, which was frustrating. We're targeting reaching 250 students on a free or reduced fee basis this year. And we're hoping to bring that up to a 1-to-1 in 2022. So 1 student subsidized for every student coming to us at the full price. So if you're listening to any of this and you're thinking this sounds good, but I'm worried that I can't afford it, if you're worried that you can't afford it, you should speak to us, because we will sort that out for you to the extent that we possibly can. This is particularly important for STEM subjects, as these are the subjects that are disproportionately applied to by students from state schools, from students from less comfortable backgrounds. These are also very competitive courses, and so we'd like to think that the edge that you can get from our support is going to make a real difference here. And so we're really keen to support students in these areas. And as I say, if you are at all uncertain about whether you can afford to work with us, the answer will be that if you are worried, we are also worried, and we will be doing something to help. So that brings us to the Q&A section. A little animation is now going to run showing you how to book a consultation. The consultation is a 20-minute chat with Dylan or Will 2, with myself, with another member of our consulting team, who'll be able to talk you through your personal situation, your circumstances, your ambitions, and work out what might be best for you. That's completely free of charge, completely free of obligation. It's just our way of getting to know you so that we can make a sensible recommendation as to whether we would like to work with you and whether you would like to work with us. Now, speaking of people who I like to work with, my friend and colleague Rebecca is joining us. Rebecca is one of our tutors. Rebecca, tell us who you are. Hopefully you should be able to unmute and tell us all about you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Daramola and I'm a biochemistry graduate from the University of Oxford. It's a 4-year course, integrated masters. I had a wonderful time there and I can completely relate to what a lot of you are thinking in sixth form, because I also was kind of navigating through that space of figuring out how to apply to Oxbridge successfully. I had a lot of questions, especially when it comes to mock interviews and how to submit the right personal statement. So I'm here to answer any questions you have about my experience or any questions you have in general on preparing for the Oxbridge interview process. Thank you so much.
Fab, thank you. Please drop any questions you might have into the Q&A box and then we will answer them. Otherwise, I will have to invent some questions for Rebecca, which would be fun. But I might struggle to justify the full hour I've arranged for her to come and talk to us. So I might just end up asking her questions I'm interested in, which might be a little boring for everyone else. So yes, please do drop any questions you might have into the Q&A, and we'll work forward from there. So while we're waiting for those to come in, Rebecca, could you tell us a little bit about your own interview experience at Oxford? Because I know I didn't enjoy mine at all, and I didn't get in. 15 years ago, but you had a much nicer time. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the interview process varies depending on the subject that you're applying for and also depending on the college that you're applying for as well. So I know that some courses like PPE, for example, you have 3 interviews, and students who are applying for engineering, some of them have 3 interviews, some of them have 2 interviews, and some people get called back for some more interviews as well. So it really varies. And the questions that you get asked varies as well. And I know that different colleges, different tutors at different colleges have, I guess, different culture in the way they like to ask questions. So what I would do when you're preparing for interviews is to prepare widely on the kind of different possible ways that they can ask questions. So with STEM subjects, for example, some tutors like to ask you to read a paper and review it during the session. Some of them ask questions right in the interview. Some of them ask questions about your motivation for applying for the course, and some of them don't. So there's a real variety. So my advice is to prepare as much as you can for the different possibilities and make sure that you reread your personal statement as well, because that's what I found some people struggle with. Make sure that you're able to kind of be prepared to speak openly about your experiences, speak about your personal statement, and feel free to ask questions as well whilst you're in the interview. And even there was a specific situation in my interview where I just didn't have a clue what he was talking about. I'd never really come across the material before. And they're very open. They want you to do well. So just go for it and be as open as possible, and they're there to support you.
Fab. Thanks, Rebecca. I'm glad that you had such a nice experience. As Rebecca says, there can be quite considerable variation between the colleges in terms of what they'll ask you about. It will depend to some extent on what the person interviewing you is interested in, what they specialize in, but they're never going to ask you anything that's completely crazy. They're not going to come and ask you some kind of PhD level problem, and a lot of it, like you say, Rebecca, is going to be based on what you put in your personal statement. So if you've said you're really interested in molecular biology and they ask you a question about it and you can't remember anything about it, that's going to look bad. So you want to make sure that you're prepared on the basis of your personal statement to have some smart questions and some smart answers to the questions they ask you. So let's say, sticking with you, Rebecca, how did you? You mentioned that there was sort of differences between colleges. How did you choose your college?
So I I was very open, and to be honest, it was all kind of random, because I know that different colleges have different differences, and some tutors have, say in biochemistry, for example, some of the tutors specialize in a particular area. The tutor in my college specialized in plant sciences, and for example, if you're a student that already knows that you're interested in plant sciences, that might be a kind of good option. But I was quite open-minded. I was, very open-minded to different aspects of biochemistry, and biochemistry is a really kind of broad area. I wasn't really sure of what area I would want to specialize in for my final year. So it was pretty much an open thing for me, and you can make an open application as well, and they kind of randomly allocate you to a specific college. But if you have a preference, for example, some colleges are bigger than others. So if you want to be in a college that's, big, large student community, then New College, for example, is a great college. And Trinity College, for example, is also a really big college as well. But if you want a small community, then say applying to Regents is a good option. And there's a number of other smaller colleges. So it's really down to your kind of preferences. And some of my friends actually said that they applied based off the food that they had in open days. So it's really just down to you what you go for.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar. Like you say, Rebecca, the funny thing about colleges is obviously there's so many of them, but pretty much everyone seems to end up liking the one they've picked. Which leads me to think, leads me to think they're much more like sports teams than they are like anything else. You might not know why it is you've ended up supporting a particular one, but you tend to stick with them regardless.
And you get to meet different people, lots of different people from different colleges. You have lectures with people studying your course across all colleges, and university societies are of course mixed. You can attend formal halls at different colleges. So you're not, because you're assigned to a specific college doesn't mean that you're not going to get to meet other people in other colleges. It's very much just like you do have the college community, but you're part of the wider university community as well. You're made to feel that way.
Fab. Thanks, Rebecca. You've had a question about the personal statement, whether it matters so much for something like maths. So I know you talked about this a little bit earlier, Dylan. As we were saying, the personal statement, the weight of it is going to be that little bit less for STEM subjects. And again, that's because what you're going to be studying, what you're going to be tested on when you get there, isn't going to be the personal statement set of skills. It's not going to be it's not an essay topic if you're working in maths. I don't know what your experiences were, Rebecca, but did you know any mathematicians who were terrible at writing?
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, I think with mathematics, obviously, like all the exams are based on numbers as opposed to you writing an extended piece. So you never really get tested on your literary skills in that way. But I would say that is important, as with any process, to be able to articulate yourself. And you could get asked, why do you want to study mathematics at Oxford? And, it's nice if you kind of have thought through a well-structured answer. So I think it is important to, kind of, I guess, package your response before you go there. And, that's why it's so important to prepare beforehand as well and seek support, because it helps you prepare. And it really, it helps a lot with your interview. Obviously, they are interested in your academics, but imagine going to an interview when they are basically asking you why you're here and you're not given a good answer. It's just not a good look. So I think it's just as important as preparing for the actual kind of math stuff.
Yeah, that's spot on. You can be an interesting, articulate person without being a great writer. But if you're neither, that's going to be a problem when you get to that interview, like you say. And it's unlikely in some respects that you're a fantastic mathematician, but you also can't get your ideas in order in words. Chances are you're going to be able to arrange yourself logically in both areas with any luck. As I say, do keep the questions coming in. We really value being able to tackle the things that you're interested in. And as I say, we've got Rebecca for a good other further half hour. So I want to make sure you get all the value we can out of her while she's here. So we've had a further question on the subject of the tests, asking whether it's worth picking between Oxford and Cambridge on the basis of the the test. So what test did you do at what test did you do for biochemistry, Rebecca? Was there a test you applied?
So there wasn't actually a test when I applied for biochemistry, and there still isn't a test. I know that for chemistry, for example, they had the TSA that the applicants had to complete. And regarding Oxford versus Cambridge, there's lots of different factors at play. And I actually personally decided Oxford over Cambridge, because when I looked into the natural sciences course, I would have had to take exams in modules like evolutionary biology, and I wasn't particularly interested in that aspect of biology. So there's quite a lot of kind of difference in the course content between Oxford versus Cambridge. So what I would recommend is having a look at the website, because they give that information on their website on the module breakdown and what exams you're going to have at the end of year 1, year 2, year 3, etc. So have a look at those courses and compare them and see if those are the courses you want to take exams in, because there's some modules that you would have already covered at A level that you might not necessarily have enjoyed. And if you see that you have to take an exam in it at undergrad, that's probably something worth considering. So for me, it was because I had to kind of take other modules as part of the general kind of biological natural sciences, which I would have applied for at Cambridge. And I just wanted to focus more on the molecular biology.
There you are. It's really important to make sure you're picking the course rather than the university. As particularly with Oxford and Cambridge, they're not radically different as places. So you want to be making sure that you're studying the right thing, which is what you're going to be doing most of the time anyway. So we've also had a question about further maths. If your school doesn't offer further maths, can it cause a problem if you're not doing it? So this is a little complicated. Obviously, there are plenty of schools that don't offer further maths. They don't have the teaching capacity, things like that. Now, if you're applying to study maths, this is going to be a pretty big problem. So what you want to do in this situation is get in touch with the college you're applying to make sure that they can give you some advice on that. Because if it's an issue with your school, that obviously isn't your fault. But if you've not done further maths and everyone else who's applying has, you're naturally going to be a little bit behind on the maths. And this varies a little bit between the STEM subjects as to how vital further maths is. But it's something that's really worth getting in touch with the college before you apply to make sure, because there will be some that are more and less flexible about further maths depending on your circumstances. We've had a question about the SAQ as well. So the SAQ is like an extra mini personal statement they ask for at Cambridge, but not at Oxford. And this is just to do with the level of contextual information they choose to use. Quite why Oxford doesn't have one, I don't know. But it's nothing too much to be worried about, and we can help you tackle it when you come to face it if you're working with us. And I believe we have resources on the SAQ in some of our books that you can get hold of on Amazon as well. That looks like that might be it for questions today. That was short and sweet. I'm sorry, Dylan, we didn't have any questions for you.
That's okay. I'll speak to everyone on the phones, I'm sure.
That's true. You're going to get the most questions in the end.
Yeah.
Fab. Well, Rebecca, you've got away with it. That's been a really short hour.
I'm so glad to be here. Honestly, if there's any way, if anyone has any kind of final questions, please let me know. I completely relate to what you all are going through. So yeah, if there's any way I can help, please let me know, and I'd be happy to share my experience.
Yeah, any questions that that you have, please get in touch with us through a consultation, and we'll pass them up the chain to Rebecca and our other student experts who can help out. But thank you all for coming. I guess we'll disappear off to watch some rugby or whatever happens to be on. Have a lovely weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next week to talk about the humanities. And the following week we won't see you at all because it's a day off for the bank holiday. But have a lovely weekend, everyone. Say goodbye, Dylan.
Thanks, everyone. If you want to speak to me or any of the team, do make sure you book a consultation. And yes, have a good weekend. Yeah.
Say goodbye, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. And best of luck with your applications and also with interviews to come. Looking forward to hearing the successes.
Thanks, Rebecca. And it's goodbye from me as well. Have a lovely weekend all.